Okay, so I'm going to start a brand new file just so that I can go over a few things to do with family creation and management before we maybe look at then why you might use an alternative modelling approach using 3ds Max instead of modelling within a family in Revit. And those are really the considerations that you should have before you start doing any modelling in any software, which is the best tool, and then when you're using the tool, which is the best approach within that software package. So again, I'm just going to start a new project and use the architectural template. And so, starting very simply, I showed you last time the site modelling tools, and that will often be a good basis. If you know that your building's sited on the ground, why not put in a ground surface as a starting point? So straight away I'm going to switch to the site view and go to the massing and site tab. So if you haven't looked in your floor plans and seen that you have a site floor plan there set up as part of the template, we want you to realise that. And again, on the massing and site tab now, I can go to topo surface, and then I'm simply going to click 4 points outside of those default views. So in other words, all of my elevation views should sit on top of that topo surface. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And so I'm going to tick that to finish my topo surface and show you now if I look in any of these elevation views, all my section views, I can see there's a ground line there that's in line with the ground floor. And that'll give me a good reference point for my ground level, so that if I model anything, it should sit above that. So I can go back to the section view and can change the ground floor height to a new level. Right, so I might, so all I've done there, in case you haven't done this for a little while, is just select the level and then clicking on the number there, you can type in a value. And you can see then the level moves up, but the ground surface hasn't moved. And that means if I go back to my ground floor plan, I can't see the topo surface there, but I can make a floor. So here this time I'm going to do a circular floor. And, well, how big would this... Libby, do you know roughly the size of that, just so I don't have to think about it? Yeah. I was going to say a bit bigger than that. 20 metres across? Yeah. Yep, okay. So, yep, so I'll just make this 10,000, nice and big. Tick to finish. And I might make the floor a bit thicker as well. So I'll make that a generic 300mm floor. And then now if I look in the section view, you can see that the floor is showing there being cut in section, embedded into the ground, but projecting above it as well, which means that if I look in a 3D view, I'll just click on the house to make one, then I can see the floor surface there clearly showing above the ground level. And maybe just to make that view a bit easier to read, I'll select the topo surface there and in properties, change the material. And very quickly I'll just make a grass material using, actually I'll go in here and we'll get one from the Autodesk folder. Do they have something in here that's pretty close? I thought there was a site material in there. No, look, I'll just make one from here. So I'm just going to duplicate that site material and call it site grass. And then don't forget this. I know a lot of people have been forgetting, when you're working in Revit, you'll often have to duplicate or replace the appearance by right-clicking on that appearance tab and go to the appearance library to find the site work folder. So I'll just get one of these grass materials and then go back to graphics and tick use render periods. Just so that the floor there stands out. Okay, so now I want to have a, I suppose it's a raised section of flooring above the main floor level there. And for that, I'm just going to use model in place, just to remind you about that. So back in the ground floor floor plan, can go to component or the down arrow next to it and then choose model in place. And then we can always choose floors as the category. So as far as Revit's concerned, this object will be a floor, but I can use any of the modelling tools to make it. So I'll call it raised or platform, so raised platform. And then I can just use a simple extrusion, and I want it to be maybe, I don't know, 100 mil, 200 mil above, and then we'll make the end 500 mil. So it's going to be 300 mil deep, starting 200 mil above my existing floor level, and just keeping it really simple. I'm going to draw a couple of circles, and I'll show you a really good trick there actually. If you want to draw something that's centered on something you've already drawn, you can type SC, which is snap to center, and then if you hover over an edge that's curved, it will automatically snap to the center of that curve. So SC. So you have to be drawing something, and then as you're drawing that curve, or anything that you're drawing actually, you can type SC, which will make it snap to the center and then just move to the edge of any curve. And then you can, again, you can draw any shape. In this case, I'm drawing a circle. So now I want to draw a second circle that's also centered there. Again, I can just type SC. And that probably is about right. Maybe we'll make it 8,000 exactly. Okay, so I'm going to finish that and then finish the model. So before I make a family in a separate file, sort of maybe go over model in place a little bit more, because this is something I know creates a lot of confusion with everyone using Revit first especially, and it's to do with the way you manage your families. So I'll just ask you, if I wanted to change the material of that family I've just made, what would I have to do? So I've made the base using a floor, and then I've made this raised platform using model in place. No, I just want to change the material. It is a family already. Yeah, you can double click it, or choose edit in place. Yep, same thing. Yeah. Yeah, or just select it once, maybe. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's basically right. Okay, so the reason it's like that is because you can have multiple objects in that family. So this is a family. The one at the bottom isn't. That's a system family. It's a type, but it's type driven, but it's not technically a component family. So this object here is just an extrusion, but I could have many objects grouped together in that family. So if I want to use the modelling tools while I'm in the project, I've got two options essentially. Using model in place, I can either go and choose model in place again, and I'll just set generic models as the category this time. Click OK. Also, let's call it what it is. It's going to be a column. And actually, I'll do a few columns. So I'm going to make an extrusion. And it's going to start at 500, and we'll make it go up to 2,500. Just keeping it simple. Okay, so notice how it's already detected the level. The level there you can see is ground floor. So I know that I'm measuring from the height of this floor that I've made earlier, because I know that floor is on ground floor. So I don't even need to be in my ground floor floor plan to draw the things that I want to make. And here I'll just, again, keep it simple and make some... Oh no, I won't do circles, I'll do rectangles. And so it'll be the same if I went back into the ground floor plan, these things will be at the same height. So just to prove that to you, I'll go back into the 3D view and I'll make another rectangle in this view. Okay, so finishing those, you can see they're both at exactly the same height. This one's a little bit off, but that's alright. Now, actually I want to delete that one. Okay, so I'll make another one, so back to extrusion, and I can keep having... No, so these, because I'm not going to model in place each time, I'm just going back to create and then choosing extrusion. These are all part of the same family.
Same family, but you can control them differently?
You can, that's right. And that's actually why you have to do it the way I've just shown you, because you can have multiple objects in the one family and they might all need to have different materials. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just finish that. So I've done 4 different extrusions. They're one family. If I select them, you can see they're all grouped. If I go to edit and place, then I can select each extrusion, can use control to select multiple, and then, as you're saying, in properties, where it says by category, we can change it from that option by browsing to any material. So, what I see people do quite often is forget that and just keep going back to model in place. And then another similar problem that you might encounter, and everyone's done this because sometimes you just do it without thinking, is you'll finish it and then copy it. So if I copy this one, and it happens all the time when you're doing things like timber slats or any small repeated elements like that, and you might have copied it, or I've actually seen people have done this and copied it well over 1,000 times. And then they realise they've got to change the materials. So to change the material of these, it's fairly easy because I can just select any one of them, go to edit and place, and if I need to change them as a group, I can just select them all with a window, and then over here, change them all together. Well, not if they're separate. So here, these, you can see they're all separate families. So if I want to change them, if I go to select multiple, I lose that edit and place option. So instead I've got to select one, edit and place, select it again, change the material, finish it, select the next one, and you can imagine if you've got 1,000 of these, you'd think, well, maybe it's worth starting again. Okay, so that's one approach, copying things within the model in place family, or the in-place family. But an even better way of managing that, we've got all of these things that are basically boxes. So maybe it's better to make one family that will control all of them. So if you go and make a separate family file, go into the menu, new, and then choosing families, you can see all these templates. And I know I've done a little bit of this before, but have I shown you all the different template families that you have there?
Yes.
Yep, so you've had a bit, yep. Okay, so which ones have you been using? Yeah, but you've got to, you use modelling players, you mean?
Yeah, or get one and then I'll copy it.
Yeah, see the problem then, if they're meant to be identical things, you've got to go and change each one. So the general rule of thumb, if you have anything in your design, and a lot of design, especially for interiors, is based on this idea of repetition, using the same design elements over and over again, creating a theme or some sort of design pattern throughout your design. So you should have lots of repeated elements. So whenever you have a repeated element, you should be thinking about making a separate family in its own file so that you can manage it. And I'll show you how easy it is. You just can choose a template. And so the reason this, I think, maybe is a bit daunting at first is a bit like Max. You have all these different options. And if you use the wrong option, you'll actually be creating a lot of work for yourselves. So keep it simple. If you're not sure which one to use, just use metric generic model. That will work for virtually everything. Another good one is metric casework. And metric furniture is also handy. That's all I would use to begin with. So I'm going to start with metric generic model. And so then I'm going to make an extrusion. And finish it. I'll type in a height over here and make it, let's say 2000, don't know, can always change it. So now I'm going to save as, family, and make it, also actually keep it in the same place. So I'll make it have a name column, and now I'm going to load that into the project. And it's got a family with the same name. Okay, so I've got to give it a different name. I should have given a different name. So I'll call this column square or rectangle. Sorry, and then I'll load it again. Okay, so it's a bit smaller than the others, but it's still the same basic shape. So I'm just going to place a few of these in there. Right, so back into the 3D view. So now I want to change these. Now these columns that I've done with model in place, I've got to select individually and change their size using all, either stretching like I'm doing there, or going to edit in place, typing in new properties and doing it the slow manual way. And the same if I want to change the materials. So I'm going to delete those. These that I've done in their own file, if I want them to change, I can just select one, edit family, select my extrusion, edit extrusion. Exactly. So let's make it 500 by 500 instead. Just maybe recenter that, roughly. And I want these to start above the ground, so I'm going to go to edit extrusion. I'm not even going to go to edit extrusion, actually I'm just going to go into properties and change the start value there to 500, so they start 500 above the ground, and I'm going to make them a bit taller as well. Let's make them 5 metres tall. So into my 3D view. Again, zoom to fit just so that I can see it. So now I want a material as well. So, I'll start just by loading in the changes I've done. So that the general approach you should use is save your file, load into project, and then just override existing version. Notice how they all change, and how much easier is that than going and editing each object individually. So then I can select one of them again. Sorry? You can group these, so yeah, you can use the grouping tool. Yeah, so you can group things, and that is a bit like making a family type. So that's an option. If you use edit in place or model in place, then you can group them to keep them identical. That's not a bad approach actually, but it will slow your file right down because just the way it stores it is a bit different. So the final thing I just wanted to show you there though is if I want to change the material, what I need to do. So I showed you to change the material of something with model in place, you've got to go to edit in place, select it, and then over here change the material. Just get something random. Now to change something that you've done in a separate file, you just need to select it, and then you'll get the option edit family, which I'm sure you've all used with families that you've loaded. And then A lot of people struggle with this actually, getting the material property to come up. So you'll always get it in the object properties when you select it. Over here you can see it's a bit like the solid that I made using model in place. I can just change this to a different material. I don't have as many there, but I'll just load one in. That'll do. Just something different. Okay, so I've loaded in or assigned a material to that. I'll save it, load into the project, and override existing. So they've obviously changed, but now this is where things get a little bit more confusing. If I want to change that now, what would I have to do? If I want to change that material and use, say, a different texture, I don't like that pattern, I want to use a different image. Yeah. So, yeah, so I can't, there's no option there to change the material, and not in there either. Yep, we would exactly have to go to Edit Family, and then I can select this object, and there's the material. Don't use paint. And you can't use paint on families anyway. Paint only works on system families, on walls and doors, and walls and floors and things like that. You can use paint within a family, but it's more work than just assigning it like this. Okay, so now if I go to the Appearance tab, I'll change that image to something else. Again, I'm not really worried about what it is, so I'm just going to choose something random. That'll do. Okay, so I've got a totally different image there. Click OK. Let's have a look in the 3D view. Okay, so I've definitely got a new material there. So I'll save it, load it, override existing, doesn't matter which option you choose here, and it hasn't changed. And this is where a lot of people get confused. In fact, everyone gets confused at first when you are working with families that have come... No, yeah, well, that would work the first time, but then afterwards, if you make adjustments, it still wouldn't change. And the simple reason is that we've got a version of the material in the project. So wood shake here is already in the project. I've loaded it from the family previously. So it's got the old setup, and then I've got a version in that separate family file that's different, and it won't update them. So it's a really inefficient way of editing your materials if you're going into the family file every time to do it. The way you should do it is using a parameter. And this is really the key to learning Revit. So at first, if you're just using things out of the box, things from the library that have parameters set up for you, you're not really using Revit to its full potential. And to actually know Revit, you need to understand families and how parameters and those other options that make families adjustable interact with families. That's really the key to understanding and knowing Revit. And the simplest one to start with is a material parameter. So I know I've shown you a little bit about parameters before, but I just want to keep going with that. So I'm going to select the family there, go to Edit Family, and I'm not going to worry about changing the material here. All I'm going to do is select that object, and where it's got the material, click on the button at the end, which is the Associate Family Parameter button. So a lot of people click on this blank button at the end thinking it lets you change the material, but then they see this funny thing and close it because they don't know what it is. But that basically lets you add a parameter just by clicking Add a Parameter down there, and we'll give it a name. We're going to call it Column Material. That's it. That's how hard it is to make a parameter. Giving a name. So now, if I save the file, load in a project, and doesn't matter which option I choose here, I can select any of those, and then if I go to Edit Type, there's my material. And so you'll see every family in the library, and virtually every family that you download from another source is going to have that set up for you. So all of those people who've been making families that you've used, they've set those parameters up for you. And you can do a lot with parameters. This is just a simple example. So I'm going to click Browse there, and now I can see there's the material that I've assigned. I could either adjust that material in the project or simply choose another one. So I'm just going to choose another one. And then notice how they all change globally. Okay, so think about that whenever you're making anything in Revit, really. You really only have two choices. You can either make 3D objects or physical objects using system families, and that's walls, roofs, floors, ceilings, stairs, ramps and railings. And so those are all predefined families that you can't adjust. Otherwise, you're making component families, windows, component, column, they're the main ones, and doors, of course. And those are all loadable families that you can adjust in their own separate files. And you just need to decide whether the things you're designing should be done using loadable families or model in place. Yeah, that's fine, let's go ahead. Okay, so when do you think you should use model in place then? Yeah, that's right, pretty much, yeah, exactly. Unique objects, so one-offs. Okay, so if your object is a one-off, like that desk there you can see wrapping around the column, that's a really good example of a one-off, unique family that's been made to suit that thing in your project. Bars might be another good example, or countertops. But if it's not a one-off unique object, you should always be using a loadable family. In other words, going to here and making a new separate family file and setting up as much as you can in that file so that you can adjust things globally. And it will, trust me, it will make your life much easier, and definitely make making changes much easier, and everything should go much more smoothly if you work that way. It's really the way the program's meant to be used.